This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Mariette's on the move.
What?
Mariette's on the move.
Again?
Mariette's on the move.
If you're dreaming about moving to a new city to pursue the life of your dreams, this podcast is for you. Moving 18 times in 23 years to 5 of America's top cities, I know it's not easy to make those decisions alone. I help you develop the dream, the plan, and the move, even if we need to get scrappy to get you there. I'll be doing interviews, career and city spotlights, and sharing my crazy moving stories, tips, tricks, and scams to avoid. Traveling to explore your dreams has never been easier. Now let's get moving. Welcome back to the show, everyone. I am so excited for my guest today. Her name is Kingston Roche, and she is the founder of Curious LLC, dedicated to helping people cultivate their curiosity for deeper learning, greater well-being, and impact, which I love impact. She's also a TEDx speaker and an education and policy leader with nearly 20 years of experience working at all levels of policy change. She is a former teacher, she's a school board member, and an advocate who has led efforts to secure policies and funding from the federal to local levels that have improved children's and families' lives and well-beings and the quality of education, which has helped hundreds of leaders build their capacity as advocates. Mary has a Master of Public Policy from Duke University, a BA from Boston University, and a certificate in Design Thinking for Innovation from the University of Virginia, which I want to hear all about because I don't know what that is, and it sounds really intriguing. She lives in Maryland with her family, and today we're talking about using the power of curiosity as your compass. And you know me, I am a genuinely curious person, so this is going to be a fun, lively conversation. So Mary, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mariette. It's so great to meet you and be on the show, and I'm excited for our conversation.
I cannot wait to hear all about your background because it is like right up my alley. So, how has curiosity shaped your personal and professional journey? Tell me how you got into this.
Yeah, so it's funny, and we'll talk more about curiosity as really a natural attribute that we all have, but it wasn't something really intentional that I pursued looking back, but it was always present. So I think we can all relate to that and we can unpack that a little bit. But I can start from childhood where I was blessed to have two parents who encouraged me to follow my curiosity, whether it was just going out in nature or trying different activities. I got really into ballet and soccer, and those were two things that I really enjoyed and still enjoy. And I think that's wonderful to continue to pursue those things as an adult too. Not all of us are going to be professional ballet dancers, but we can still go to the ballet and even take ballet classes. And so how we can keep nurturing that. I have 3 siblings I grew up with. So for one thing, that made me really competitive and still am, but also kind of following them as they follow their curiosity and just, latching on to other people's interests and seeing where that takes you. So all those things really helped me nurture my curiosity. And then moving cross country at age 22 after graduating from Boston University, I know a lot of your listeners are thinking about moving or getting ready for a move, and you support them with that. So I would say if you're wanting to do it, and that's part of the adventure of curiosity is that it is meant for action. And so it was a great adventure to move cross country, and it got me started into my career in education, where I started off as a teacher for 6th and 9th grade students and really loved it. But I started getting curious I started asking myself questions, getting curious about, why things were the way they were in our education system. Why were my students further behind in their reading grade levels when I got them in 6th grade, and what caused that? What lack of resources or support? And I would ask myself other questions like, why do we have these processes that seem to, not make things harder for teachers instead of easier?
Right.
So that led me to graduate school. And I think our curiosity, if you do, and this is something I do with my students in my online course, have them do like a curiosity journey line throughout their life to look at,
Oh,
when were you most curious? What were you curious about? How did that lead you to the next step? To really help them remind themselves that curiosity has been present in their lives. And so, getting my graduate degree in policy really put me on a path of 13 years in education policy and working to secure policies and funding that would ensure that all kids received an excellent education and all the supports they needed, and enrichment. One thing I'm really passionate about now is making sure that all kids have access to discover and explore their curiosity, regardless of socioeconomic status or where they live. And so that's something I'm pursuing as well. And then along the way, and I can't describe exactly how this happened or why, but I think it was because I decided to embark on what I call a joyful challenge, and I talk about this in my
mm,
online course too. This idea that we as humans, I think, actually crave challenges, even if we
yeah.
don't realize it. Sure, sometimes we want to crash and watch Netflix, and that's great and needed sometimes. But overall, I think we're really wired to want to challenge ourselves. So the idea of a joyful challenge is really picking something that you're excited and a little bit afraid about to do, and putting yourself investing in it, and whether it's a matter of weeks or months. And so for me, a couple years ago, that joyful challenge was training for my first marathon. I had been a lifelong
Ooh,
runner, but had never done a marathon before. And so it was 12 to 16 weeks of, pretty dedicated training.
yeah.
And I think that during that training, and what happens when you put yourself in that situation is that the rest of your life you become more curious in the rest of your life as well. And so it was during that summer of training that I kind of just landed on this concept of curiosity as
Hmm.
a really powerful attribute for ourselves personally. And then as I began to connect the dots across my career, I realized how, we want to bring this back into our education system and ways to do that. And we want to bring it more into how we make policy and how we advocate effectively. And so that led me to start Live Curious LLC, working with both individuals to cultivate their curiosity and with organizations to achieve greater collaboration and impact. And so I think it's just been a through line throughout my whole life, but in the last couple of years, it's been more explicit and intentional. And what I love to do now is help reawaken that in others and and help them realize that you've always had this. We've always had this inside us, but we want to it when we really focus on nurturing it. That's when we can really live a wonderful, adventurous, curiosity driven life.
And you're collecting data that whole time, you know? Like, I
Mhm.
love that you did a marathon. I did the 2013 Chicago Marathon. And you can wing a sprint, you can wing a half marathon, walk, run the whole 9 yards, but you cannot wing a marathon. Like,
No.
that is, even if you are a casual runner, that is something where you have to experiment and you have to see what
Mhm.
works for you and what doesn't work for you, and like genuinely ask yourself the question, like, do I feel good if I have 3 eggs before a long run, or do I not feel good? Or do I
Yeah,
like this jelly? Do I not? I mean, it's little experiments that you're collecting data, but also that curiosity factor. You have to ask yourself questions, and sometimes hard questions like, do I even want to do this? I
right.
did not do three. I trained for 3 marathons. I did one. The first one I ended up hurting myself, and ended up having to get foot surgery. The second
Wow.
one I was like, I'm doing the New York Marathon. And I was like in New York. And that was like, I don't know why I always wanted to do the New York Marathon. And I was just not ready. Like, it was too soon
Mm.
after my surgery. It had been a year, but it just wasn't, my doctor's like, you can do this marathon and not walk again, or you can wait a year and walk again. Like, it's up to you.
Right.
So I was like, great, 2013 Chicago, here I am. Um, but so what are some challenges that, somebody that is using a curiosity led path might face?
Yeah, great question. And actually, I'll circle back to our marathon discussion because
Yeah.
I also ran the Chicago Marathon in
You did?
2021, and I'm sure you agree it's a great course, an
Yep.
amazing crowd. So for any listeners who are thinking of running a marathon, check out the Chicago Marathon. It's really great, and then you can
Flat
get
as hell.
flat, and then you can get all the deep dish pizza you want after. So,
Carb loading.
and I
Gotta
also
do it.
couldn't really walk after, but it I still encourage people to do it. But
Yeah.
I could walk 2 days later. But an example
I don't
is
think I could. I think it took a solid week for me to get over that because I think the longest run that I had done was 20 miles. So,
yeah, well, and that brings up another thought.
yeah.
So thank you. So I'll the first one is the challenges. So I'll use the marathon as an example. So when I ran the marathon, and keep in mind, as context, I've been a lifelong runner. I ran in college,
Mm,
competed in college. So I and I'm competitive. So I wanted to do well in
yeah.
this race. My goal was to get a Boston Marathon qualifying time, and I achieved that, which I was really proud of.
Well,
And
for our listeners, what does that mean? Because that is like, I don't know if you're watching on YouTube, my eyes got really big because that is hard. That is really hard.
yeah, thank you. So Boston Marathon, it's varies by age group, like what age you are. But for my age group at the time, the qualifying time was 3 hours 35 minutes, which is averaging like 8:08 per mile. So I got under that, and I was really proud of
Wow.
myself. But an example of a challenge of curiosity is going by other people's expectations. So what happened was, right after I got that qualifying time, I thought, great, I can register for the Boston Marathon. This is going to be awesome. I'm going to do it. But maybe as you felt after a marathon, I just needed time to recover, and I didn't feel like starting to train for my next marathon right away.
Yeah.
I literally would have had to start training, a month later for a
Immediately.
March or April marathon, and I just wasn't feeling it. And I really checked in with myself, like, why would I do this marathon? Is it because I really want to do it, or because other people are excited for me or expect me to do it because that's what you do,
Yeah. Have you heard of Monate or Modern Nature? I hadn't either before my friend Monica was raving about their skincare products that she's obsessed with. I took their hair quiz to find out which product line would be best for me since I just happened to be looking for new shampoo and conditioner, and I signed up for their VIP package that got me a little bit of everything to try out. Turns out they are the first anti-aging hair care line in the world, which I didn't even know was a thing, and their products are gluten-free, vegan, and Leaping Bunny certified, which means they're never tested on animals. Now I'm obsessed with their rich formulations that feature botanical extracts, essential oils, and other naturally based ingredients, and I want to share those products with you. I'll put the link in the show notes, or you can hit the faves page on my website. It's safe, EU approved, and clinically tested by third parties, so essentially, robustness approved. Now back to the show.
Boom. Play it.
Have you ever listened to a commercial on the radio or a podcast and thought, I could totally do that? Well, I am challenging you today. Being a voiceover artist is an amazing side hustle that can be done from the comforts of your own home. Heck, it can be an amazing career. Just ask Jesse Carroll. Jesse's got over 1,000 voiceover credits to his name. Ever watch Backroad Truckers? He's the narrator. He's also done a ton of commercials for brands you would definitely recognize. If you're ready to try your hand at voiceovers, go to marriottsonthemove.com and head to my favorites page to learn more about his new digital course and coaching package. If you use code MOTM, you'll get 20% off at checkout.
Hey, Micah Burgess here. I just wanted to drop in for a second and let you guys know that we are rebranding my podcast. We've got a new name, My Doula Micah, my birth, my baby, my life. And we are super excited about extending the content that we've got going from childbirth to postpartum. Now we're including family and marriage and just kind of your life in these childbearing years and what that looks like, and maybe give some helpful tips and wisdom. I mean, I'm 51. I got 6 kids. I think I can help you guys with some stuff. There will still be local interviews, of course. And I'm also expanding now to have including more nationwide interviews. We even have somebody from Canada and Australia. So I'm super excited about this process and what we've got in store for y'all. So join us.
And so I think one challenge of curiosity is just staying true to yourself and kind of putting aside the expectations or the you should or of other people and checking in with yourself about like what am I curious about. And it's never too late to chart your own path or to be true to yourself. And that could be in the smallest of ways, like
Yeah.
signing up for a class that you're really interested in and dedicating some of that free time, or in bigger ways like a career change or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's one lesson. And then I feel like there was another lesson around this, but so other challenges, curiosity, and the marathon might come in again. I think, and I talk about this in my TEDx talk, which is throughout our lives, starting in childhood, when we enter school, ironically, our curiosity is kind of conditioned out of us by different factors. And
Mm.
so part of it is just recognizing that that's happened and that it's not, our fault. But once we realize it, like a lot of things we say, it's not our fault, but our responsibility, or rather our opportunity to gain it back. And so starting in school, I shared this stat in my TEDx talk that um, preschool age children, when they're in the home environment at home, ask anywhere from it's like 27 to 107 questions per hour. They're like
Oh
rapid
my
fire. And it's amazing,
God.
right? Like
Yeah.
amazing and crazy at the same time.
Yeah.
But when they go to school, that drops to, I think it's like under 10 questions an hour or something.
Oh, wow.
And of course, it's because, they're in a group setting, a teacher can't answer all the questions. But there's also this factor of, the way we've set up school. And for my work in policy, I know our policies reinforce this, is to focus on getting the right answer instead of asking a great question, right? And so
Mm.
we've been conditioned through school, through our 12 years, and if you go to college, more so, to really focus on getting the answer correct, even if it's a true or false, rather than exploring the challenge, exploring the question. So we have
Yeah.
to reclaim that sense of inquiry and wonder as adults, and
Yeah.
we have to be intentional about it. So that's one of the challenges. Another challenge is, in 2024, we live in a very hyper politicized, partisan, polarized
Mm-hmm.
environment. And it doesn't help that we have now so many different apps and things on the internet that allow us to curate our lives and our worlds to reinforce our own worldviews. And I think even those of us who are really, reflective don't always realize, and I'll use myself as an example. I didn't realize until I started thinking about this just how much, the news I read, if it's all from one political angle, that's just going to reinforce, my own worldviews. We need to actively seek out diverse
Mm-hmm.
perspectives, and not just for politics and issues, but, in our friendships. How can we meet people who have completely different backgrounds than us and different views? And this doesn't mean we need to compromise our values, but it means that we need to be open to hearing different viewpoints and maybe even open to changing our minds about things. And
Yeah.
so some of those challenges have to do with our own internal mindset around, you know, what we feel our identity is. Like, I believe X and not Y. And asking ourselves, why do we believe that?
Yeah.
And where does that come from? And kind of unpacking that. So a lot of curiosity is, yes, the adventure and the exploration and the action, but a lot of it is also pausing and taking time to ask ourselves these reflective questions.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are, I would say, a few challenges.
I
Mhm.
love that. Yeah, it's funny because you go through grade school, middle school, high school, college, and you are being told what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And when you get out of college, and this is kind of the gap that I'm seeing, especially because I mentor a lot of young adults. Now, all of a sudden, you're like, okay, great. You're out on your own. Go get them, Tiger. And they're like, wait a second. Am I on a schedule? Where do I have to be? What do I get to choose my own, what I wear, what I want to be when I grow up. But I think we
Mhm.
lose this because in college, you have these general like majors, right? You can be a teacher, you can be a marketing person, an advertising person, public relation, whatever it is that you're learning to be, but there's a lot of jobs out there that can combine a lot of different things, right? So
Mhm.
it's funny because I was coaching somebody that they were like, yeah, I've got all these great degrees, but I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And they're like, almost 30.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, have you asked the Chat GPT? Because this has become my new assistant. I, like most people who listen to the podcast, know that I work full time. I travel a lot for work. I don't have time. And I also, like, I'm curious, but sometimes there's things that I don't know that I don't know. So
Right.
if I can have something crawl the internet for me and ask even better questions, I'm going to do that. But I'll say, like, all right, go into ChatGPT and say, I am really good at math. I really love music and concerts. I love coffee, and I'm really good at whatever it is, like, being organized. What are some
Mm-hmm.
good career choices for me? And it'll crawl and it'll look at all the job postings that says, like, I need this, 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 this in it. And it'll give you a list of things. And people, when I tell somebody that, their mind is blown because they don't think about that, because you don't know what
Mm-hmm.
you don't know.
Right.
And if you don't know it, how are you going to ask the right questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before we got on the show, or before we hit record, Mary and I were talking about how sometimes, just instead of like validating from external sources and like asking everybody else, like, take a step back, sit with your, still small voice, and just ask yourself, like, what does bring me joy? What used to bring me joy? What do I like doing? Like, yeah, you could be really good at math, but if you hate mathing, like, do you really want to get in a job like that?
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
So,
One
like,
of my
reconnecting with what you like.
Exactly. One of my curiosity role models is Sir Ken Robinson. Look him up if you haven't heard of him.
Okay.
He was an amazing uh, educator and thought leader in the education space. His big thing was around bringing back creativity in learning in our schools, and it's very correlated with curiosity, right? We can't have one without the other. Curiosity, I like to think of it as kind of the spark for
Mhm.
creativity and innovation and all these other things that we need that first. And one book I'd recommend for your listeners is for everyone listening is he wrote a book called Finding Your Element. And he
Ooh.
asks a lot of those good questions you just shared, Mariette, around, what do I love? What do I find myself, talking to my friends about in a really energetic way?
Yeah.
Like what can I not get enough of learning about or whatever it is? And to your point about not limiting ourselves or boxing ourselves into one, society defined or predefined identity, we're all we're all evolving. So what you're
Mhm.
interested in at age 20, you might want a different career at age 30 or 40, and that's great. That's a sign that you're evolving. So
Yeah.
for people who are in college or just starting out, don't feel like this is the one path you have to take. So
Yeah.
for me, for example, as you were talking about this, I realized that, as you read my bio, I have a Master of Public Policy degree, and I still am passionate about and help people learn how to develop good policy and advocate effectively through a curiosity lens. So to do this
Mm.
in a more curiosity driven way. And so that's how I'm combining my interests. But I would also, informally describe myself kind of as a life coach now, as you are as well, Mariette,
Mhm.
as a certified life coach. And, I likely will want to get my certification too at one point. And,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people in society might think like, well, wait, Master of Public Policy and life coach, you don't hear that often. Is that a
Right.
thing? And it's just kind of defying those boundaries and expectations to say, yeah, like I can combine these two things and this is me. And so what is that for you? And not being limited by, if you get this degree, you can only do these 10 jobs and that will be for the rest of
Yes.
your life. That's maybe that was true in our former economy, but now it's really the sky's the limit for, especially for young people starting out. If you have a blank slate,
Mhm.
stay unlimited. And for people, I'm 41. I kind of have reinvented myself career wise by bringing in this curiosity lens. So there's always ways that we can and should evolve, and that idea of a joyful challenge can help you learn about some maybe latent passions that you had or discover new ones, and how you can weave that into your life instead of, either ignoring it or having to upend everything. We can weave in our passions and make something unique like you are, and like
Yeah.
I am. So,
Well,
so yeah.
in the company that you work in, being able to identify those gaps and what personally affects you in your role, and being able to bring that to somebody saying like, hey, you know what, I felt this way, and then I asked a couple of my peers and got their perspectives and they felt that way. Is there any way we can do this? A lot of times, and I'm a leader at Fortune 200 company, right? And a lot of times, until somebody brings something to me and says, you know what, this would really help me in my role, I'm like, I can't remove a roadblock that I don't know exists. Like, that's
Right.
amazing. That's an easy one. Let me help you remove that roadblock. But
Hmm.
sometimes it's like you leaning in on your curiosity to say like, what would, because a lot of times as a leader, and this is, advice for anybody in a job at all, when they're bringing something to a leader, it is helpful for you to have a perspective or an idea to share. So if you bring something to a leader, like, and I'm very lucky, I have an awesome team. I'm so grateful for, like, they're all hustlers. They all know what they're doing. They're all very tenured. But a lot of times when I was coaching younger, because I've had several leadership roles within my company, a lot of times people just come up and complain. And I'm like, great. Well, what do you think I should do about it?
Hmm.
I don't know. Just do something. Okay. Well, that's not helpful. Right. So what's helpful is if you have an idea, if you have a complaint, figure out what would work for you and other people within your organization doing that. And then pitch that idea. Somebody as a
Hmm.
leader coming to somebody as a leader and asking for help is one thing, but to complain is another. And so that could be a way you can bridge that gap. Like, this is what I'm seeing. This is the perspective of others. These are ideas that we've all had. We would adopt that if we did it. That's using curiosity as power and
Hmm.
empowering your leadership to make a change, because that's what their job is, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
but I am curious, like, you have a digital course, and I know
Hmm.
you have 5 steps that can take somebody through if they're, having some of it, like, they want to use this. Like, what are those 5 steps, and what's your digital course about, if they can jump onto that?
Yeah. So the name of the course is Rediscovering Your Curiosity, and the word rediscover because we have it within us, but we just want to rediscover it. It's a
Yep.
6-week online course, and it's on my website, and I'll make sure to drop all that information later. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would encourage anyone who's interested to check it out and sign up. So there's 5 steps that I take everyone through. I call it a curiosity compass roadmap. And
Love it.
I'll actually just talk for a second about the idea of our curiosity as a compass, because I know we mentioned it
I
earlier.
love that.
Yeah, and so as I thought about curiosity, I was thinking, what would be a good metaphor for this? And I
Yeah.
thought of the idea of a compass because, yes, a compass is old-fashioned, but it's great in the sense that a compass doesn't tell you what to do or where to go, right? It just tells
Hmm.
you the direction. And
Yep.
I think as we've talked about careers and things like that too, this is also really helpful as you think about careers. Is um, First of all, it takes all the fun out of life to know where you're going to end up. Like that's the whole,
Yeah, the
like,
journey is the fun part,
yeah.
right?
Now, if we were running a marathon and they keep moving the finish line, like that
Yeah.
wouldn't be fun. But
That wouldn't, no.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
You'd
it's
have a lot
nice.
of really mad
Um,
people.
yeah, and and of course we need to plan some things in life, and there's some obligations, and yes, but and knowing yourself about like what kind of combination of routines helps you stay open for new things, that's important. But the idea of a compass is to have that sense of direction. You're using your curiosity as your true north and continue to walk in that path of what you're curious about, to follow your curiosity. And so extending that metaphor, let's say you're on a curiosity hike, or your life is a trail. You're not gonna always know what's around the corner. There may be, a big pit of mud or a
Hmm.
bear or something, but one, that's life. Life has those challenges, so we're going to encounter them anyway. And a compass, you can stop because there's not a GPS telling you, you need to arrive by this time, and it's like, pressuring you to arrive. You can take your time. You can wander, meander. You can take things in. You can experience awe. You can stop to smell the flowers or whatever it is on your hike, and then continue on your path. And maybe taking an unplanned path will take you somewhere even more joyful than your original planned path, and being open to different directions and saying, okay,
Yeah.
let's try this different way. Versus a GPS, which again, they're wonderful for road trips when, we're on especially if we're on a timeline, or if you've got little kids who are impatient having a GPS. But I actually argue that little kids would enjoy detours and a road trip too. But
Yeah.
a GPS is more about, plugging in the destination and just putting blinders on. And a GPS is all about the most efficient route, not the most joyful route, right? So,
Yeah.
and with life, if we really think about it, and this, we have to challenge again what society has told us in our country, in the United States. It's an amazing country. At the same time, there is this pressure on us as individuals to achieve as much as possible and be
Hmm.
productive all the time in this hustle culture.
Yep.
And we want to work towards our dreams. That's amazing. But do it on your own terms with your own compass, right? And
Yeah.
and don't feel the pressure of a GPS that is telling you you have to be at this point by this time. And so that's the idea of the curiosity compass as a metaphor. And in my online course, for everyone who signs up, I actually mail them 2 compasses.
No
And one
way.
is for themselves as just a
Uh-huh.
reminder, a visual reminder, and one is for them to share with someone else, to
Oh,
help
I
them.
love that.
So the 5 steps of the roadmap, the first one I call awaken, because I think with anything that we do, we always have to start with ourselves internally, right? So the idea that, just as you were saying earlier, kind of questioning our beliefs and values and mindsets. And a lot
Yeah.
of times, without knowing it, we have limiting beliefs about ourselves, like, oh, I can't do that. And so I talk about a growth versus fixed mindset and kind of
Mm.
unpacking some of those questions. Why do I believe this? Where did this come from? And the power of living in the present and not worrying so much about the future or thinking too much about the past that takes us out of a curiosity mindset. The other thing I talk about in that awaken step is that, and this is from a Swedish psychologist who wrote the book about the 7 stages of grief. Um,
Mm.
I forget her name now. Oh, I think it's Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And
Okay.
she has this quote where she says, there's truly just 2 core emotions, love and fear. And we can't be in both at the same time. So we want to be hopefully mindful about choosing love as much as we can. Curiosity comes from a place of love if you think about it. We can't be curious if we're fearful. So I
Right.
talk about this idea of, living in a world of wonder versus a cone of comfort. And so,
Oh, say that again.
living in a world of wonder versus a cone of comfort.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
I
it-
love that.
yeah, so a cone of comfort, we're borrowing ourselves down into our comfort zone, kind of staying there, afraid of the world. A world of wonder is being open and saying, what am I going to discover today? What am I going to pursue or explore today? And maybe that means a quiet day with yourself and journaling
Hmm.
and, in nature, or it could mean an exciting adventure, whatever we choose. The next step goes to explore, and that's really the idea that, curiosity is meant to be explored. And so I give people tips and strategies on how to do that, and I talk about the difference between, um, under knowing and understanding. So knowing is like, again, going back to when we were in school, we were encouraged to like just learn facts and then just spit them out. But
Right.
understanding is a deeper level. Do you really understand, the history of this and all the nuances? Or if you think about your relationships, I could know your favorite color and ice cream flavor, but do I really know you as a person, right? And then the idea of experiencing over learning. So when we travel, think about the last place you traveled where you saw some really cool things. We also might feel pressured to, you know, learn facts about that place so we can share with our friends. But instead, try to first just experience it. Sit in a church or a cathedral that you're visiting and take it in instead of trying to go to a plaque and learn about it.
Yeah.
Um, the next step is strengthen. So our curiosity really, while it is innate in all of us, it does take, you know, um, purposeful action to strengthen it like a muscle. It's like a muscle.
Hmm.
And so I give people different techniques to do that, like asking great questions, open-ended questions, and this all can relate to your career, as you talked about, to bringing that to your colleagues, deep listening and how to do that really well, seeking out diverse perspectives, like I talked about earlier, and then trying and learning new things and getting outside your comfort zone. And that idea of a joyful challenge comes in play there. The next step is about enrich. And so, part of my theory of change with curiosity that I talk about in my TEDx talk is it's not meant for us to just keep to ourselves, right? We need to share it with others. One, because it'll inspire others to spark their own curiosity. And two, if we want to change how we live from a GPS driven world to a compass driven world, we need to share this with others so others can live that way too. And so I give people ideas on how you can start small with one or two friends or people you love to some actions to share it with them. And then in your community. And then the last step is sustain. And so beyond the 6 weeks of this course, or when you're really focusing on it, some techniques to really sustain your curiosity. One, I think, in the same vein of how I believe that we crave challenges as humans. I also believe that we are wired to keep growing, and if you ever in your life, if you have ever felt stuck, it's not a fun feeling, right? Whether it's stuck in
Mm-mm.
a certain job or a relationship that is not, bringing you joy or good for you anymore. We have a physical, emotional response to that. And so how we can use curiosity as our way to keep growing, and that can look different. It could be, taking a course, learning something new, getting new certification. It could be a physical challenge like you and I talked about. It
Mm-hmm.
could be a spiritual challenge, whatever that is. A good question to ask yourself every day is, how am I growing? And if you're
Good
not,
one.
then pick something that you can, and start small if you want, but pick something to focus on. So
I can't
yeah,
remember who said it, but it was like, if you're not growing, you're dying or something like that. There was some,
I've seen that. I believe that. Yeah, I mean, think
yeah.
about nature, right? Like, nature can teach us a lot in that way. And yeah, it's funny because I'm lucky to have a husband who brings home flowers from the grocery store every week, and and my kids
Cute.
help him pick it out sometimes, like the color or whatever. And we'll talk about how, like, these flowers are beautiful, but we need to keep changing the water to keep them fresh. And then,
Mm-hmm.
once you pluck them, they sort of are dying. But so, and that's okay. They're still beautiful, but
Right.
like, for the kind of the bigger lesson is like, so that you can be in your natural habitat, like rooted in your own, curiosity to keep growing, um, and keep freshening the water, keep growing, keep learning new things. Um, so yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I often see that. I don't know if it's a meme or what you would call it, but where the picture is of like a tiny, it's like all the roots underneath the the
Hmm.
the mud, and then there's like a tiny itty bitty thing, but you don't see all the growth that's happening underneath it, and it's just about to break through. And I think a lot of people give up on those goals that they have because maybe they're not enjoying the journey, but they really want to get to the goal. And the journey's the best part sometimes, right?
It
Like,
is.
I can't even tell you how many times I have made a huge pivot based on like enjoying that journey. Like, I'm a
Yep.
joyful mover. And I think that sometimes when I get into that space where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exciting, a fresh start, I lose that ability to stay in my own zone right now where I am
Hmm.
and explore and see how I could grow in this community versus
Hmm.
just starting fresh and starting over if I'm not figuring out what I want. And I'm doing that right now. I'm using my own framework. I'm building my strength because the other thing too, and when you said strengthening and training and being purposeful in those intentions, I think part of it too is like you have to build your strength up to, like, if somebody's just getting out of college, jumping into a 40-hour job or 50-hour job a week, that takes some strength training. Like, you have to train to be able to focus for 8 to 10 hours a day.
Hmm.
That is a really big thing. I have a friend named Melissa, who is a dear, dear friend of mine, and she had taken some time off. She was still doing big events in her industry because she works in the music industry, but they were like, spurts and sprints, and she would,
Hmm.
expel all of her energy. But working a full-time job is a marathon, right? You and I both know that. It's like
Hmm.
you have to strength train to get up to that point where you don't leave a week and you're like, I'm exhausted, I need a glass of wine. I get up early in the morning and I do Pilates or I walk on my treadmill, but that's only so I have the energy to get through my day.
Hmm.
It's you really have to lean into strengthening, um because if you don't, that journey is going to feel hard, very
Hmm.
hard, especially when you're moving.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, right. There's so many times in life where it's gonna kind of test you. Moving is a very stressful time, right? And
yep.
even the term joyful mover is kind of what's the word? It's like
Oxymoron.
not oxymoron. It's inspiring. I was trying to think of a different word, but I'll say
I
inspiring.
know what you're thinking, and I can't remember what it's called. It's like I don't know.
I know, and as an English major, I'm embarrassed that I don't.
I know it's.
But yeah, it basically, you're thinking the same thing. It goes against the grain of what we
Yes.
think of when we think of moving. It's kind of saying, oh yeah, you think it's stressful? Like this is going to be joyful. And I think that's the whole point of what we're talking about today is how can we see life as an adventure, as a journey to be enjoyed, instead of something to get through, to get to some other end, or to, you know, and so I think another book I'd recommend, and this kind of goes with the awaken step to really get your mindset and kind of thoughts and feelings in the right place, is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Oh, I've read that. Oh my gosh, I
It's
love that book. It's so
yeah,
good. It like keeps you
yeah,
in the moment.
yeah. Another book, it'll come to me. But and we can put them in the show notes. But
Yeah.
what I love about and Eckhart Tolle also has good podcasts where he talks through this. But what I love that he talks about is he says, the saddest thing to me is when I see someone who has a bumper sticker that says something like, "I'd rather be in this place or doing that," because what we want to do is just be present.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we're in times that are challenging, asking yourself like, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? And knowing that everything is temporary. And I think when it comes to curiosity, it's a mix of being open to the unexpected. And even, there's actually research that shows that people who are more curious can better handle uncertainty. And so I think
Oh,
when you talk
interesting.
and even see uncertainty as an opportunity to
Yeah.
learn and grow instead of something to be feared. And so when you talk about young people, especially, I think about, young people still in college or right out of college, really trying to navigate the world and what they want to do. It can, if you let it, cause a lot of anxiety because, people are asking
Mm-hmm.
you go to, family events. Well, what are you going to do? And
Yeah.
so if you come from this at a mindset of, you know what, I'm listening to, my inner curiosity and I'm following that. And this is a journey of discovering and refining, and learning what I am truly curious about, what I love to do. Going back to our point earlier, that it doesn't have to look like this one set way, that it can look a
Mm-hmm.
different way. So I think curiosity, there's a combination of both being open to things that are spontaneous and unplanned and not knowing, in
Yeah.
addition to purposeful curiosity, which is the idea that you're intentionally leaving time every day to explore your curiosity, whether that's through journaling or
Mm-hmm.
doing something more active. That it's a combination of that, open-mindedness, but also purposefulness, that you're putting time into it as you would other things in your life.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, leaning in when something does feel good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like exploring that. Why do I like this so much? What is it, triggering that is bringing me joy versus seeming hard? Because I think that as you go through those steps, you are collecting data,
Mm-hmm.
and data is data doesn't lie, right? If you decide you're going to start training for a marathon and you do 12 miles and you're like, I hate running. Well, why would you do another 14? Right?
Right.
Take that and say, maybe I'm going to be an amazing half marathoner and that's what I want. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But marathon, just like we were talking about earlier, it's something that you have to really like, because 26, I mean, no one really asks you when you say you run a marathon, no one asks you like what your time was. I mean, at
Mm-hmm.
least they didn't ask me because they knew better. I'm
Or
5'2".
my kids, because they didn't know anything about marathons, and as you know,
Yeah.
Chicago is a huge marathon with
Yeah.
tens of thousands of runners and really
Yeah.
elite pro runners. My little kids asked me, "Did you win?"
You're like, yes, I am a winner. I
Yeah.
finished.
Yeah, that's
Right.
right.
I
We're
mean,
all winners. Yeah.
it took me 6.5 hours. It probably took you 3.5, but we both hit the finish line and
Right.
we both accomplished that goal. We just took different paths to get there. Mine was just
Yep.
a tiny bit slower, but
Mm-hmm.
the whole time I was so happy I
Yeah.
was like, well, maybe one, because I was closer to the finish line with every step. I'm one of those people that I was like, I like the half marathon is my sweet spot. Like I can do a half marathon. But the marathon, that was, to me, I was like, I got the t-shirt, I got the teddy bear with the, 10, 13, 13 on it. And that's all I need.
Right.
But it's gathering data. I know now that I don't ever want to do another marathon, but I might maybe train for a half marathon. That was a lot of fun, and it was a good amount of time, because it does take me 3 hours to do it. So, but I have a short stride, and like, to me,
Yeah.
that's I'm not doing it for the gold medal. I'm doing it because I genuinely want to get healthier and help my body, and have 3 hours to think about how fun this is, that I'm accomplishing something I set out to do. Right.
Yeah. And I think
So,
what you're talking about here is so important. It's like just love paying attention to what you love to do and doing it, doing more of it,
mhm,
as you said, leaning in. And the most inspiring thing to me, and you can probably relate, is seeing people just who love what they're doing, And
yeah.
I was planning a webinar the other week with different speakers. There was a woman who works in Maine at a housing um, housing authority, and we were talking about her job, and I said, a lot of the things you do, it sounds really cool. Is your job fun? And she goes, I love my job. I love hearing that, and I think we all deserve
Oh,
that. And
yeah.
I think the role of curiosity in that is, as you said, to pay attention to what you love to do, and find ways to do more of that. And if it's
Mhm.
in your current role, great. Like, look to do things that you love to do. As a quick example, for me, when I was at my former organization, and this is part of my former teacher hat, I just love being creative and playful, and helping people have fun and make fun out of things. So, to help my colleagues learn about kind of current policies and how policy works, I created a skit where people would play roles, and that there were some funny parts in it, but also some serious lessons about how we need to make sure we're not making assumptions on either the side of the policymaker or the advocate, and really
Mhm.
talking directly to people directly impacted. Um, and that one skit, helped them learn more. They told me, than just like me presenting a PowerPoint about how policy works.
Aw.
Because I think, like, and I leaned into my love of being creative and imaginative, and whatever that is for you. Like, maybe
Yeah.
you love, like, to draw or make things visual, or maybe with podcasting, for example, this is a great outlet to reach people.
Yeah.
So bring that into your space now, and then if you, for a combination of reasons, if you feel like you're not doing what you love now, or you feel like you're not growing, that's a really big sign that you want to, explore other options. But take what you love to do to that next step, and then just keep
Yeah.
going on that journey.
I absolutely love that. I'm doing that in my current role in my full-time job. In fact, I was just asked to do, so what brings me joy in my job, and somebody asked me once, like, what my greatest accomplishment is, because I've left the company a couple times and I've always come back. I love the culture. I love, how we can adapt and pivot and change. Um, and I've had the awesome opportunity to be able to coach and mentor. I think I'm going on like 20 people now. I just talked to somebody the other day that, like, really would love my help. But to me, I have leaned into the place where I love watching somebody make just a few minor tweaks and then having the best sales year they've ever had in their life.
Hmm.
And to me, that's an accomplishment for me, that I could help them think differently, give them a different perspective, or give them some tools in a toolbox for them to try. And then if they still don't like it, then yeah, go. But like, why would you give up all of your training, all of your, resources, all of these things, because you're having a hard time right now? And
Hmm.
part of what I'm doing, and this is part of the, I don't know if I mentioned this, but Mary and I met through a public speaking course. I've had a couple guests on now that I've met through this course, which has been so much fun. It's called Mic Drop Workshop. And I leaned into it because I want to be a better public speaker. I used to do a ton of public speaking before the pandemic, and then you go 3 years without, and it's like, I fell off the bike. The bike no longer has pedals. I have a
It's
flat
rusted.
tire.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't even like the color anymore. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to go back and relearn how to ride this bike. And I said, I'm taking my love of mentorship and really watching people just excel. And that just like lights me up so much. And I'm creating a keynote about it to be able to do that on a grander scale, because I've had so many people come to me and be like, oh my gosh, you like rock my world. And the whole time I'm talking to them, they're like deer in headlights. I don't think this is resonating. I don't know if what I'm saying even makes sense to them. And then they'll come back to me a year later and be like, I know we only talked 3 times, but I had the best year I've ever had in my life. And I'm going to send somebody else to you to do that too. So for me, like I'm in the Women's Opportunity Network. I'm in Women in Sales on their committee. And I said, hey, like I'm thinking about putting this, we're calling it fake it till you make it. That's a temporary term. But to me, it's like acting as if you are in the role that you want to be in the job that you're in today, and like how that can cultivate impact in your current role to provide value to show them you'd be good in another role. Right.
Yep.
And so I was like, hey, I'm happy to do this keynote to them. And they like not only embraced it, but they're scheduling it in October. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to do
Congratulations. That's
both things that I
amazing.
love.
Yeah.
Like I get to mentor people within the organizations that I might not have access to, because I'm in healthcare, which is just like one vertical, but we are very siloed. Like we only work with healthcare systems. Like I used to be in education. That was very siloed. We only worked with education. So now I get to open that up and like, indirectly mentor a bunch of people, with one 60-minute speech. Right. So like, how can you act as if in your role, collect the data to see if you like it? Like, I don't know if I want to go out on stages all across the country, but I can try it in my own backyard and see if I like it. And if I do, I've collected data that says, yeah, you might be good at this and you're going to have fun.
That's
Right.
right.
So
Yeah.
genuinely curious.
I think you can recall similar memories when you were a kid, but I think the curiosity journey line I talked about earlier helps you
Yeah.
also to look back in your childhood about what you were curious about or interested in, and
Hmm.
kind of bring that back to the present. And you could be curious about different things now, but also to like look back. So it's funny, as you, Mariette, were talking about that. The TEDx talk for me really made me realize how much I love it. So I was telling
Yes.
Mariette before we got on that I live in Maryland. The TEDx talk was in Florida. Due to a hurricane a couple days prior, my flight was canceled. So my friend and I drove there. And then on the drive back to Maryland after the TEDx talk, I was on such a high. And
Yeah.
I just knew like, this is what I have to do. And then looking back in childhood, I have memories of this is funny, but like standing in front of my bathroom mirror and like pretending to give a speech. Like,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. And that brought
we
you
do have,
joy. Yeah.
yeah, right, right. And we do have these memories, and they are important to, because, what we loved as a child, if you think about it, as a kid, we didn't worry about what people thought about our interests. We just pursued
Right.
what we were curious about. And so it really is a gold mine to look back and see. And you talked about, confidence, and curiosity really helps with that, because
Hmm.
in my TEDx talk, I talk about this phrase, courageous curiosity. And it's this
Yes.
idea that we, in situations which we know might be tense or we're afraid, whether it's, giving a speech to a big group of people or having a tense conversation, to use our curiosity as our power to lean in. So to,
Hmm.
instead of shying away and assuming I'm going to bomb it, or this conversation is going to go really bad, just to say, you know what, like I'm going to approach this with courageous curiosity. I'm going to, whether if it's a speech, I'm going to give it my all and be myself, and that's, I'm going to bring it. Or if it's
Yeah.
a tense conversation, to come with some of that compassion and curiosity to really try to help uh, towards a successful outcome, and to come with it with curiosity to say, how can I make this a good conversation when I know it's also going to be a little challenging. And this
Yeah.
applies to work too, going, as you mentioned earlier, even the act of someone going to your supervisor or someone higher up in an organization is courageous in itself. And but going into that space, not to, as you said, just to complain or just to, say to them, how can you make this better? But to use some courageous curiosity in that to say, like, you know what, I have some ideas, or you know, I was thinking this. And if they turn it down, then that happens, and that's okay. You can keep, you know, you can keep on the path and doing your own thing. But chances are, when you bring in that courageous curiosity, you're helping yourself and other people, because you're choosing actively to put aside the fear in favor
Hmm.
of approaching that from that place of love and curiosity and abundance. I think so many times we do, in our heads, limit ourselves and our abilities. So, you know, for example, going back to the marathon as a
Yeah.
good continuing metaphor, what if you and I had both lined up at that line and focused on all the negatives? You know, like, oh my
Right.
gosh, my last training run was bad. Like, I felt horrible. I don't think I'm fit for this. I don't think I ate enough, or I ate too much. All these negatives, and that we can relate to that in your life. You know, when you wake up in the morning, um, another recommendation, Oprah has a podcast. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it's easy to
I know
Google
she has like
Oprah.
Super Soul Sunday. She's got a
There
bunch
you
of
go, Super
different.
Soul Sunday. Yeah,
Yeah.
she had someone on who is a preacher, and he talked about, you know, if you have a bad night's sleep and you wake up and you're really tired, you can choose one of two options. You can go through the whole day grumbling and complaining that you're so tired and it's going to be a worse day as a result, or
Hmm.
you can reframe it in a positive way to say, okay, it's not ignoring the truth. You can say, like, yes, I'm tired, but I'm looking forward to getting a good night's sleep tonight, or I'm looking forward to my second cup of coffee when I go out with my friend in an hour. Like,
Yeah.
focusing on the positive helps you come from a place of curiosity and pursue your curiosity, which then helps you live your life with
Hmm.
joy as an adventure. Versus, you know, if you again look at the marathon course, you could look at that as 26.2 miles of doom, you know,
Yeah.
of pain. Or you could choose to, you know, it sounds like you did too, just really enjoy the process and
Yeah.
get that high from other people, the runners, the fans.
Yep.
Bring that back into yourself and say, like, this, like, sure, this hurts a little bit, but this is amazing. And that's
Yeah.
metaphorically, that's what life is too. Everything is going to be a challenge or hurt a little bit, but focusing on that positive, focusing on the curiosity aspect and the journey.
Yeah, I don't know why we always go to the negative. And it might be because our subconscious is trying to protect us, but you don't have to believe everything you first think, right? Like
Hmm.
that's a
Yep.
choice in itself. And I think that if we go into it like 6.5 hours of a marathon, I also had a sprained ankle. That was another thing that happened right before the
Oh my
marathon, about 3 weeks
gosh.
before the marathon. But if I stepped up to that line and was like, oh my God, this is going to suck. I'm going to hurt my ankle worse. I'm going to do it probably would have. But I walked
Hmm.
up to it and I was like, you know what? This is going to be awesome. I'm going to finish a marathon today. Like, I
Yep.
don't care how I get there. And I took pictures with people. I took like a 10-minute
Hmm.
break with my dad because he was in the crowd and following me from place to place. I love signs.
Hmm.
I took pictures with all these people that had all these like funny signs. Like, I worked at Disney. I did my internship at Disney as a safari driver for the Kilimanjaro safaris. And
Wow.
there was one that had like, Beauty and the Beast on it, and it was like looks like a beauty, runs like a beast, and so I had to
I
take a
love
picture with
that.
that one, but it was like I had so much fun that day. I don't even
Hmm.
remember what the running was like at
Yeah.
all,
The
so
running is secondary.
totally.
The
And I
joy
think if
is the
you are,
experience.
yeah, if you're trying to move somewhere, for a career, and you're spending time on that journey, enjoy it. And that is
Hmm.
data as well. If you don't enjoy it, that's more data, right? Like you are
Hmm.
collecting data to make decisions. And if you don't lean in on some of the things that make you feel good, or you have more questions on or something, you could miss a whole entire chapter of your life that you could have pivoted to joyfully, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
oh
Yeah.
my
And I'll
gosh.
just quickly share. So I talked about moving cross country to California and teaching there. And
Yeah.
during those 3 years that I lived in California, I would fly back and forth often on winter breaks and whatnot, and summer and other times to see my family in Massachusetts. And so I would do those 5 hour direct JetBlue flights.
Yep.
And I have this, what's the word? It just real affection as I look back on that time of, like, having my notebook out, sitting in the window seat, kind of like writing down at age 22 or 23, writing down, like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? What am I interested in? It was so wonderful because it feels like
Yeah.
the beginning of your life, and I'm in this really intensive but also great experience of teaching, and how is that impacting it? And before I really ventured on this curiosity path I am now, I remember feeling, oh man, like I wish I could be that age again where everything was possible and everything was in front of me. And now with this curiosity mindset, and when I try to coach in others, is that we can do that our whole lives. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be just at the beginning of our life. We can always have that notebook out or mental notebook to say, like, what if, back to your point earlier, leaning in to things that you love, paying attention. What am I enjoying now? How can I weave that into my life? As an example, I work with a woman in my online course who works full time in an education role in a nonprofit, and is also opening her own jewelry business because she loves
Ooh.
doing jewelry, and she's doing it with her daughter, and that brings her a lot of joy. And she's doing both, and she's not
Yeah.
making herself choose between one or the other. So, what is that for you that you can weave into your life, and just keep that notebook open, keep a fresh
Yeah.
page every day? What am I learning and experiencing that brings me joy, that I'm, and the act of paying attention, um, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
sometimes if you like don't love your job, having a hobby or something that you're doing outside of it actually can bring you more joy inside of your job, because that purpose that you feel like maybe you're lacking in one area could be fulfilled in some other area in some other way that you don't even realize. Like for me, that's the podcast. Like I'm a total creative. Like my one of my very first memories is actually me in a play in second grade playing a teacher. Um, I had these old lady glasses on. I had this like gigantic moo on. I don't even know where we got. I think it was
I guess
like
that's what teachers look like,
right in my
huh?
head. That's what my teachers looked
Yeah.
like. But I needed that joy. I was feeling burned out in my job, and and everybody's like, well, this is like another full-time job. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't feel that way though. Like I have so much fun. I get to ask so many questions because I'm not an expert in moving. I've done it a million times, but I still am curious about all of the different facets and how it, shapes our lives and our journey. Because I'm not done changing, right? I'm
Right.
47 years old, and I know
Mhm.
that there's several chapters ahead of me that I can't wait to get to that will present themselves when it's supposed to present itself, you know?
Exactly.
So I love it.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Mary, I mean, this has been awesome. Like I said, when we started, 30 minutes, which has now turned into an hour almost, and
Get two
very
life
easy to do.
coaches on a podcast, and
Right. Exactly. Who are very curious, by the way. So if somebody wants to get your digital course or find you and connect with you on social, how do they find you?
Yeah, of course. So my website is https livecurious.us.
Okay.
So livecurious.us, and then you can message me on the website, and there's information on my online course there. And I also have some blogs, and I also do speaking as well. So feel free to reach
Yeah.
out if you're interested in having me speak at your organization. And then I'm on Instagram and Twitter at livecurious2022.
Okay.
So I would love to connect with any of you who want to either take my online course, or have me for speaking, or just learn more about, or just chat about living a curiosity driven life. So,
I love
Mariette,
it.
just thank you so much for having me on. I love what you're doing as well.
Thank
The
you.
idea of a joyful mover is, helping people realize
Counterintuitive.
that, yeah, there you go.
That's the
I mean,
word.
exactly. Yes, because that would have been like, I would have been thinking about that the whole day.
Me
So,
too.
yeah, and kind of like the marathon, like we were talking about, I think, it helps people reframe,
Mhm.
what society says, or what our mind originally says is a stressful situation, to a situation where it could be an adventure, right? I think
Yeah.
that's the whole idea of curiosity too, is seeing life as an adventure. You're the navigator of your own life with your compass. Use a compass, not a GPS, for your life,
Yeah.
and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, I'm creating a digital course. And if you're on my Monday mailer, when it comes out, you'll be the first to know. But it's literally called a roadmap to use when deciding to move. Because instead of plugging in like a GPS, like Mary said earlier in the show, physically sitting down with an actual roadmap and looking at all the options and the elevations and the peaks and the valleys of that roadmap can really you could have so much joy in that.
Hmm.
And I love our conversation. I think that there is I think curiosity brings joy, and I am all about a joyful path. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. If you haven't watched her TEDx talk, please get on her website and watch it. It's fantastic. I think it's like 10 minutes of, great golden nuggets that you can use and apply to your life. So thank you so much, Mary, for being on the show.
Oh, thanks, Mariette. This was a lot of fun.
Good.
Right.
Well, I could go on forever and ever about moving you closer to your dreams, but I probably should save some thoughts for the next episode. A big thanks goes out to you for making time for me today. In making time for me, you're making time for future you, and we're both grateful. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to the podcast, download the episodes, and leave me a 5-star review. I would really appreciate it. In return, if you go to my website, mariette'sonthemove.com, and register for the Monday mailer, I'll send you a free Fred workbook to get your journey started. This is also where you can find all the show notes and all the ways to get in touch with me. A special thanks goes out to Rogue Media for its wisdom and partnership. Until next time, friends, keep moving forward towards your dreams. Oh, and the legal stuff. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. I am a certified coach, not a licensed therapist, and this is not meant to replace the professional advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professionals. This is solely my perspective based on my own experience and training. Okay, now it's over. For reals. Bye for now.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.